Judges chapter 13. We're going to go into a little bit of the life of Samson. I know that some people have, at least I was talking to the youth after, some people know Samson's story very well, and some people know it or don't know it at all. And it's a complicated story. It's a lot going on here. So we're going to dive right into it. Verse 1, it says, "Now the sons of Israel, again, did evil in the sight of the Lord, so that the Lord gave them into the hands of the Philistines 40 years. Now 40 years, let's stop there, represents the number of judgment and completion. All right? The Philistines, they were representing God's ultimate enemy at the most powerful moment. The Philistines were more architectural, more technologically advanced. Militarily, they were better than Israel in every way. They were the first ones who messed with iron, who invented iron and had battle formations. They are representing God's enemies at their strongest, and Israel is a very small country. And that they have oppressed Israel, and they're reigning over them for 40 years. Verse 2, "There was a certain man of Zorah of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had borne no children. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, 'Behold, now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and give birth to a son. Now therefore be careful not to drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. For behold, you shall conceive and give birth to a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the boy shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines.'" Okay, so let's talk about some things just in right there in the first 5 verses. It's interesting that Samson's mother is not mentioned. Samson is the last of the judges, and he has the most detail. Even minute details are given about Samson's life, but Samson's mother's name is not mentioned. And what we have gathered just through the first 5 verses is she's actually not particularly godly. She's been told by the angel of the Lord, do not eat unclean things. If she's a Jew, which she is, she should have already been doing that. By the Mosaic law, she should have never been touching unclean things. So she's not mentioned. We know that his father is Manoah, so we see his mother is not exactly godly, but an angel of God comes and says, you're going to have a child. You're going to have a child. And so she runs and tells Manoah as the chapter goes on. Manoah's like, okay. And he prays to God, God, send him that man again. And he comes back. And they start asking the angel questions. They're not really realizing that he's an angel. And then at the very end, Manoah asks him, he's like, let me know your name so I can honor you. And he's like, it's too wonderful for you to know. You can't comprehend it. And he says, if you want to do something, offer a burnt sacrifice to God. So he does. And while they're doing that, the angel of the Lord goes up into the flame. And this is where we pick up in verse 20. It says, for it came about when the flame went up from the altar toward heaven, that the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell on their faces to the ground. Now the angel of the Lord did not appear to Manoah or his wife again. Then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. So Manoah said to his wife, we shall surely die, for we have seen God. But his wife said to him, if the Lord has desired to kill us, he would have not accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands, nor would he have shown us all these things, nor would he have let us hear things like this at this time. Then the woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson, and the child grew up, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him. So let's talk. We see a little bit of maturity in Samson's mother's life, okay? She's telling her husband, don't worry, God's got this. God's got this. Basically what she is saying is this: I trust that God will do what he said he would do, and I'm ready to obey him. She's echoing some of the greatest women of the Bible in that statement. Like, she didn't do what Abraham and Sarah did. Sarah laughed. When God said, hey, look, you're going to have a son, she starts laughing. She didn't doubt. She didn't do what Elizabeth and Zechariah did, actually just Zechariah. When John the Baptist was foretold in the New Testament, angel of the Lord comes to Zechariah while he's in the temple doing his thing, and he says, you're going to have a son. Zechariah did not believe him, and the angel of the Lord shut his mouth for 9 months. So for 9 months, I can just picture this in my mind. Like, his wife Elizabeth is preparing a nursery. She's rubbing her stomach, baby showers, all the stuff that happens when you have children. And I believe wholeheartedly that she is also rejoicing in the fact that for 9 months she wins every argument because her husband can't talk. Like Samson's mother, you see mature. She's maturing in her faith, and she's like, basically what she says, I trust that God will do what he said he would do, and I'm ready to obey him. Can you say that this morning? Can you say that this morning in your life? Let's talk about the Nazarite vow, because that's what the angel said. He says, listen, this child is going to be a Nazarite from birth. Now, they normally took Nazarite vows for a period of time while they were fasting and seeking the Lord. There's 3 things that the Nazarite vow consisted of. Number 1, do not cut your hair. You cannot cut your hair the entire length of the vow. And what that symbolizes is that you are set apart to God, that you are his. It's the same thing as when I wear my wedding ring. I'm saying, that's my wife, I'm hers, she is mine. We have an outward appearance of a commitment that's happening. That was what was happening with the not cutting the hair. The second thing they could not do, you could not drink anything from the vine. So there's no alcohol, there's no liquor, there's no wine, there's no grape juice. There's nothing from the vine. And the third thing you could not do, you could not touch dead things. That was the Nazarite. Chapter 14. Samson is a man now. And it says, then Samson, verse 1, then Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. And so he came back and told his father and mother, I saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore go get her for me as a wife. Then his father and his mother said to him, is there no woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all our people that you go take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she looks good to me. If you can summarize Samson's life, it's in that statement right there. Get her for me, for she looks good to me. With Samson, see, when he went to Timnah, that's 4 miles away from the village of Zorah. He had to walk 4 miles into enemy territory, and God told him, don't marry those women out there because they'll pull your heart away from me. They worship different gods, and they did it to Solomon, and he warned the Israelites, marry within Israel because they know me, they love me, they serve me. Samson didn't care. He walked 4 miles into enemy territory, and basically what he is saying is this: I don't care what's good for me. I want to do what I want to do. I don't care that my parents are against this. I want to do what I want to do. I do not care that God forbids it. We see 3 things that Samson struggles with right off the bat. Lust, I want it. I got to have it. Entitlement, I deserve it. This should be mine. And pride, hey, I can handle this. I can walk into this no matter how bad it is, and I'll get what I want. Then we keep reading, and I'm not going to go into all this, but we keep reading, and what happens is Samson is going to Timnah. His parents are trying to get the wedding going on, and they're going to Timnah, and it says that a young lion comes and attacks him, and he doesn't have a weapon, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he rips the lion to shreds. Now, I can wholeheartedly tell you I have never experienced a lion trying to attack me in the wild. I've never experienced a lion trying to attack me anyway. The only lions I've ever seen are in the zoo, all right? And that's fine. They got a barricade between us. I'm happy about that. What I have been attacked by was the opposite of a lion, and it was scary enough. It was a rat. And I tell you this, no exaggeration. I was preaching one night at a church, and the very back row, I see all these youth, and it looks like they're doing the wave, like at a concert or at a ball game. It's like they're all up in their seat going out. And the first thing I thought, we're in a Baptist church, I'm like, what is happening? Is somebody getting slain by the Spirit? I'm preaching, I don't know, I didn't do anything, I don't know what's going on. But these kids are falling out and running, and then I realize one side of the room is on this side, and one side of the room is on this side, and in the middle is like the sewer rat. And the rat's looking this way, and he's looking this way, and he doesn't want to go by the people, and then he looks, those little beady eyes locked dead on me. And I'm on the stage. And I remember this so vividly. I was thinking, it's fight or flight. You can fight in the cage, but if you can't fight a rat for the glory of God, what are you doing, right? And I was like, if I run out of here and I fight, I will never live this down. What gospel preacher is going to run from a rat, all right? And to make matters worse, it beelines toward me, to the stage. So now in my mind, I'm pumping myself up in these 0.3 seconds that's going on. I'm like, draw the line in the sand, let's go, rat. And all I have in my hand is a Bible. And I know that the Bible is called the sword. But I'm like, I am not going to slice the rat with the Bible. I don't need blood on 1 Corinthians over here. I am going to deal with this rat by myself. And I'm thinking, it's not going to come. It's not going to come. And it's coming. And it is on its way. And as I'm standing up here, I will never forget, the rat jumps onto the stage that I'm at, And in an act of Holy Spirit power, I jump, kick down, the rat runs to where my foot was, smashes down, and pops. And blood goes everywhere. All over my shoe, all over the stage, and you would think that everybody in there would be, but nobody's saying a word. And then so I just casually look over at it, and it's whimpering and whining, so I just went, boom, kicked it, made sure it was dead. Nobody's still talking. I pick up the Bible, and I look at everybody and I said, one thing we know for certain, I'm anointed with the Spirit of God. Let's go. And I just kept preaching. And then you can imagine I start getting calls all throughout the week. Bro, I heard you killed a rat on stage. And then it gets exaggerated because that's what people do, especially teenagers that are there. So people are thinking that I did like an Ozzy Osbourne thing where I pulled a rat out and bit the head off and threw it out. And I'm like, no, I was assaulted. That thing came at me. I defended myself and the Spirit of God took over and I killed it. I slain it. I did it right there. That was the closest I've ever had to a Samson experience. That was it. I killed a rat for the glory of God, all right? That was it. But we'll keep going. Verse 8. So Samson kills this lion, and then it says, when he returned later to take her, talking about to be his new wife, he turned aside to look at the carcass of the lion. Behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the body of the lion. So he scraped the honey into his hands and went on, eating as he went. When he came to his father and his mother, he gave some to them, and they ate, but he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey out of the body of the lion. So let's think about this. Samson's on his way, following what he should do, and he turns aside. The Bible specifically says that. He turns aside, and he sees something dead. He sees the carcass of the lion, and it's got honey in it. And he goes up, and he scoops out the honey and starts eating it. In that moment, it's amazing, though. I just want to think about this for a second. In that moment, he's headed somewhere on the right path. And then he turns aside to stare at something spiritually dead that the enemy is dangling in front of him. Things that have no life in them. We do that all the time. As we're walking, and the enemy puts something in front of us that's dead, but it looks sweet, but in the end will leave us in ruin. Samson is literally, the next verse after that, he's going to a feast. He's going into a wedding ceremony. He's going to have all the food and all the sweet delicacies that he could possibly want, and he stops and messes with something that's dead. How many of us do that? The enemy pulls out something that's dead and dangles it in front of us, and it looks great in the moment, but it will lead to death and destruction for our lives and our family. What was Samson not supposed to do? Touch something that's dead. By stopping and scooping the honey out of the dead lion's carcass, Samson is literally breaking his vow to God. Samson compromised the vow before God for a scoop of handful of honey. Now that's nasty already. That's nasty. But if you're taking notes, put this down. Men are nasty, all right? They can be. Look, I am one, I understand. They can be nasty. Because in the moment, you got to think, they're probably maggots and flies and worms and all kinds of stuff in there. And this dude's over there just eating it, oh, this is good. It's terrible. I learned it very fast when I was in youth ministry early on. Michael Strayer can attest to this. We have to have this conversation. Of every youth group we've ever been at, we have to go to our guys and say, you have to bathe. Whatever trip we go on. We have to. Because here's the thing I know about junior high boys, specifically junior high boys, is that they will not bathe when you take them on a youth trip. And they will take the dirty clothes that they have off, go and when you make them shower, and then go and put the dirty clothes back on. And then if you confront them about it, they'll sniff their clothes and go, they're good. And they're not. They're not. The guys can be nasty. I understand this. What Samson's doing is nasty. It's gross. And it makes you think the devastation that Samson is riding on himself in this moment. How can a child of God, someone who is called, someone who has a purpose as great as Samson, going to give it up for something that's dead? How can he do it? The answer is we do it every single day. We do it every single day. We betray God for something as insignificant as a handful of honey because it looks sweet in the moment, and we have the same attitude of Samson, the lust, the entitlement, the pride of, hey, I want it. Hey, I deserve it. Hey, I can handle it. In his moment, while he's walking, he's like, hey, I killed that lion. I deserve to get what I want out of it. I can handle it. It's not that big of a deal if I touch something that's dead. It is a big deal. Sin always is a big deal. What's interesting, though, at the end of verse 9, he says this. He gave some to them, to his father and his mother, and they ate. That's because when you compromise, understand, you never sin alone. It always affects somebody more than just you. Your sin will always affect somebody more than just you. Verse 10, then his father went down to the woman, that's supposed to be his new bride, and Samson made a feast there, for the young men customarily did this. Now, what you don't see is in Hebrew, the word feast is mistah. And the actual meaning of that, see, the Bible translators are being nice, but the word that they're using, mistah, it means a celebration or occasion for drinking. 2 times in one chapter, Samson has broke 2 of the 3 vows to God. So now he didn't just touch dead things, but now he's going to get drunk as well. He's going to drink. Again, our hero in this story is compromising. He's like, hey, well, I deserve it. It's my wedding. Hey, I can handle it. It's not that big of a deal. When you compromise with sin, it's always a big deal. It's always a big deal. Let's fast forward to the end of Samson's story. It's tragic how it ends, actually. His selfish, sinful behavior causes him to self-destruct. You will see this monster of great strength with his eyes gouged out and is the laughingstock to his enemies. But let me tell you, if you continue to compromise with sin in your own lives, you will end up a lot like Samson. And you're saying, all right, Clay, Pastor Clay, are you telling me that I'll have my eyes gouged out and be the laughingstock of my enemies? No, I'm not telling you that. It might be way worse than that for you. It might be much worse. It's much worse one day when you wake up and you realize that the spouse that you loved for all these years, who was so faithful to you, is gone because of compromises you made. Or when you realize, when you're in your 60s or 70s and you realize that your kids want nothing to do with you, you don't know your grandchildren. That's way worse. I spoke with a man in his late 60s who had just retired, who sat there and cried and told me, he said, my kids want nothing to do with me and I'm not allowed to see my grandchildren because of what I compromised with their mother in our marriage. He said, if I could go back, I would change it so much. That's way worse. That's way worse than what Samson did. But what's interesting, Samson still has his long hair. He still has his long hair. At this point, he's broken 2 of the 3 vows. But he still has his long hair as an outward appearance of his relationship with God. Samson is doing what a lot of church people do. They metaphorically still have their long hair, and they're metaphorically saying, hey, I'm still with God, but their hearts are far from them. Their hearts are far from him. See, what Samson didn't realize when he touched the dead thing and he does the mistah and he goes and drinks all the alcohol, the damage that he's doing is he's robbing himself of the intimacy and the relationship of God. That's what he's breaking in that moment. He's breaking that. So he can outwardly go around and say, listen, I'm a part of God, but I have not been faithful to him. I do not love him. I do not love what he loves and hates what he hates. I am just a part of God by mere appearance. Don't let that be you. See, here's the thing. When you lose your intimacy and fellowship with God, that will make a strong person weak every time. Every time. And the enemy loves that. Satan loves to do that. He loves to make strong people weak. But we serve a God who loves to make weak people strong. He says that in our weakness, his strength is revealed. So I got 3 attitudes for you that we don't copy Samson on, that I want you to see. Instead of lust that says, I want it, we say, I want God. I want God. I want to love him. I want to know him. I want to worship him. I want to serve him. I want to have a relationship with him. I want to focus on him. I want him. That our hearts echo Psalm 42 where David said, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul pants for you. That's what we want. We want him. We want him in all things. So that when we're walking down the paths of life and Satan brings up those dead things that have no life in them, but they look sweet to our taste, we say, no more, no more. I have him and he's all I want. That's why Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love him with all of our hearts, all of our minds, all of our strength, all of our souls. That's what we do. Instead of the entitlement attitude of saying, I deserve this, we realize and acknowledge that we deserve death and hell. And that by God's grace and the cross of Christ, we are given life, heaven, and a relationship with him. This keeps us humble and grateful. Instead of the attitude of, hey, I can handle this, of pride, our attitude is, I cannot handle anything without Christ. I need him in every area of my life. Every moment, I need him. I have to have him. So then when people see the good in us, they don't see us, they see Jesus, because that's what's really going to help them. So if somebody comes and says, oh, Pastor Clay, you're a strong leader. No, I'm a weak leader. I just acknowledge my weakness and go to his strength because he fills me with his Spirit, and that's how I'm walking. That's how we all should walk. Because if we think we're doing it by ourselves, we will be very weak very soon. It's interesting, though, in verse 5 of chapter 13, it says this at the end of it. Well, I'll just read the whole verse. It says, for behold, you shall conceive and give birth to a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the boy shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. So if Samson only begins it, who finishes it? Jesus. Jesus is the greater Samson. He's the greater judge. He is going to finish what Samson started, and how Samson desperately failed all these times. Jesus never failed. He never fails. So we have some similarities between them. Both Samson and Jesus were promised before their birth. Samson was actually the only one in Judges that was like that. Both of their births were miraculous. Samson's mother was barren. Mary was a virgin. Samson was a Nazarite, a respected religious man. Jesus was a Nazarene, a culturally despised outcast. The birth of Samson brought joy and honor to his parents. The birth of Jesus brought disgrace and shame to his parents. Like Samson, Jesus' strength will not reside in the size of his muscles, but in the indwelling power of the Spirit of God. But unlike Samson, Jesus will never compromise, never falter in obedience, and never substitute his will for God's. In Jesus, we have a Savior. Though he was strong, he for our sake became weak so that we may become strong through him. Samson's strength may impress us, but Jesus' selfless, sacrificial life transforms us. Jesus was the real Savior, and he came to save us by entering our shame and our guilt and taking it on the cross and saying, it's over, it's done. If you follow me, if you know me, if you love me, then all of the righteousness that I have, that I live the perfect life that you never could have done, was given to you, and then I'll pour my Spirit in you, and you walk with me. So the things of this world, those dead things that constantly attract us, they won't look appealing because you've seen what real life is. You've seen what true beauty is. You've seen me. So I want to ask you this morning, how have you compromised? What sins have so easily entangled you that you keep going back to? Because the terrifying part of the story of Samson is this, is that when at the end of his life, when he finally breaks the last vow, he was thinking that he'd just get up and fight like he always did. He'll fight the battles in front of him. He'll defeat them, and he has no problem. And when they cut his hair, the scripture says one of the most terrifying verses I've ever seen in the Bible. It says, he did not realize the Spirit of the Lord had left him. And the reality is, God never left Samson. He left God. And that is us. He does not leave us. He promises he will never leave us nor forsake us. When we roll into compromises and sin, we're leaving him. But the beauty of the gospel is that Jesus Christ stands back and goes, come back to me. I love you. You need me. You're filling your stomachs with dead things. Your appetites are sinful behaviors, and it's not going to last. It will not satisfy you. It will leave you empty. It will leave you lacking. It will leave you wanting. But I am a fountain of joy. I am a fountain of hope. I am a well of inexhaustible Spirit that will fill you and love you and know you and take care of you. And he's telling that if you compromise, you will end like Samson. So I ask you this morning, where have you compromised? As Cammie comes in place, where have you compromised? What sins are you struggling with? Repent. Believe the gospel. Jesus never left you. You might have left him, but he never left you. And he's waiting for you to come back. Spend some time with the Lord this morning. We're going to do things a little different. I just want everybody to bow their head and just spend some time with the Lord this morning. Think of those things that you have compromised in and ask God to free you of that and come back to him.